everybody. Welcome to another live stream. Marlene?
Yeah, and it is. It's great. It's great to be back again after another month. So we're going to dip into at least a couple of the main things that we thought were happening this month. Before we get to that, I'll just say thank you. We just want to say thank you to everyone who watches, those of you who comment, like the podcasts, whether it's here or on Facebook or wherever, and shares them round, because it really makes a difference. Really kind of pushes out the kind of reach that the podcast channel has. And also a big thanks to those of you who have given us some money via coffee. Bought us a coffee. We've just started doing that, and it's great. Thank you for all of that.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, it is. So two of the big stories this month, I mean, in UK stories, not just up here in Scotland, have been the 10th anniversary of the independence referendum and the Labour Party and how it's faring after 3 months in power. And of course, they had their Labour Party conference. Oh, yes, is it a bit like that? Keir Starmer. It does include. Yes, I think Fiona's doing a kind of meme for Keir Starmer's fall from grace. He's even lost an MP already, although he's got a lot of them, so he probably won't notice. Also, the three of us have been out and about. Not at the Labour Party conference, of course. I didn't do that. But there've been a lot of independence-related activities, of course, that have been happening, and we'll tell you about those as we go along. But we're going to start with the 10th anniversary, right? The still yes, and I wasn't. I'm sure I'm not the only person who kind of thought there was a bit of irony in that it was those of us who lost that referendum. We're the ones who've been out on the streets and in front of the Parliament, almost celebrating, at least maybe not celebrating the losing the referendum, but celebrating that we're here, and there's a very active yes movement in Scotland. Films have been made about it, and we've got a wee clip from one of them coming up. And there've been various rallies. While the folk who won, I wouldn't say they've been nowhere to be seen, but they haven't been anywhere to seen on the streets.
No, not at all.
So, Fiona, I think you've got a clip to kind of kick things off, haven't you? Let's have that one.
A couple of clips. And the event at Holyrood, the atmosphere was lovely. So this first clip is about an hour before it started, and it just shows people getting set up and just give you a flavour of how chilled it was. So we'll start with that.
In the brooding dawn, broken families and hearts repaired will touch Scotland away in many men, black and white into the urban, but the vile barracks of the ministers there.
Wasn't that delightful? It's people, just Scottish people filling in time, singing.
Of course. Yeah, so we sing. And if we don't sing, we have a musical instrument with us that we've just happened to think, I'll just take it along with me.
We shout out. Some people I heard shouting out, Marlene, didn't I?
Yes, that's true. Oh, well, that was true. Yeah, that was true. That was later on.
We'll come back to that because I've got a little anecdote about that from Leslie.
Oh, right.
But this is the actual. This gives you a better idea of the sort of crowd. This is once it got going. It happened to be God McIntyre Kemp's speech, but it gives you a nice view. And again, beautiful evening.
Referendum, though, that's one of the things we've got to realise now. There has been a focus on having a referendum. What we need is a new national conversation like we had in 2014, an enlightening situation where we're out there talking to people about their hopes and dreams to build a better Scotland. That's what moved the polls.
So it was a decent size of crowd, but yes, there was a part during it. We've actually put a podcast out of the speeches because they were very good. The best one of the night was Leslie Riddick by a country mile, I thought, and she got on a bit of a roll with the crowd where she was calling out things that had happened since the no vote and shouting check, check, check. Marlene here, standing next to me with another pensioner for Indy friend, suddenly we started shouting check every time check. And I happened to be walking into a conference, the Scottish Currency Group conference, at the same time as Leslie Riddick, and I said to her, great speech, Leslie, did you hear people shouting check? She said, yes, I could hear it from the stage. And when I was actually hearing it, I thought, oh, I mean, she was mentally rewriting her speech so that you could carry on shouting.
Well, that's really good. That's really, I didn't know that actually. That's good. I'm meeting up with Andrina, who's my friend. We were both shouting out check. Yeah, we were egging each other on a bit. So I'll tell her she'll be really pleased to hear that. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, it has to be said. I mean that Holyrood rally was great. And it, as you said, it was a decent enough crowd. 7 o'clock on a Wednesday evening. It was a decent enough crowd. I mean, not compared to the size of the population of Edinburgh, but a decent enough crowd. But it has to be said that this maybe past year or maybe longer than that, the kind of marches and rallies, they're not so well attended as they used to be. I mean, certainly not up at the 50,000, 80,000, whatever. I mean, earlier in the year, the one that I was involved with, Pensioners for Indy, working with Believe in Scotland, who did the march and rally in Glasgow. I mean, that was all right. I mean, we reckoned 4,000, something like that. The month after, there was an All Under One Banner march that was maybe, I don't know, a couple of thousand. That was also in Glasgow. But I'm just going to show you. A couple of. I can find it. I'm going to show you a couple of. Here we go. So that was slide 2. Let's go back to the previous one. Now that was taken at the beginning of September. It's George Square in Glasgow. And that was when there was the so-called pro-UK rally, basically so fascist and racist rally. And that was the crowd of people at the sort of bottom edge of that photo. So the Guardian reckoned there might have been 200 of them, 250. And they reckoned there was about 2,000 people who were there, protesting against that. So that's the crowd at the top half of George Square. So say 2,000 people. That's 2,000 people. So that's the same camera. It's a webcam at the top of the city chambers. Now that was the Hope Over Fear march that was just a couple of 2 or 3 weeks back, and you can see it. I mean, I was there. I was wandering around a bit, and it wasn't even. The people who were there were not close together. So, I mean, I didn't think there was probably more than about, 500 would be kind of generous. So there's always reasons. There's always reasons for these things. But, what do you think? What do you think yourself? Do you think maybe, those sorts of rallies have had their time and, we need something else going forward?
I think potentially we need something else. You can't beat the feeling from those earlier marches. Even the January 2020, when it was chucking down and people were dancing under the bridge. There were kind of joyous occasions. But nowadays it seems to be difficult. You maybe post a picture if you've been along to something, and people say, "Oh, I wished I'd known I'd have come along."
Yeah.
So I think communication channels are being disrupted. Things are being damped down on social media. Anything with a political slant to it is being damped down. Posts are I'm hearing this, and I'm not being a conspiracy theorist, but posts are just not getting out there. So I've got a good example. Neil had shared a post the other night, and he put it into other groups as well as sharing it on his private page. And I had 48 shares within a couple of hours, which is pretty reasonable. But on his own private page, or his own page, not one like on it. Nothing, not a comment, nothing. So it's all very strange. Sorry, I've just had a small creature jump on my lap.
Oh. Oh well, he's welcome, or she's welcome.
Cats for independence.
Cats for independence. That's great. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Sorry, Fiona, you were going to say.
I was just going to while you were petting the cat there, I was just going to say hello to people in the comments. We've got Woof Pet there, and Gillian and Andrew. So welcome, folks, and nice to have you along with us. Yeah. Sorry, carry on, Lynn.
Yeah, that indeed. And if any of you, those who are watching, if you've got any ideas about where we're going or where we could go with respect to marches and rallies or other options, stick them in the comments there, and we'll put them up. Yeah. I mean, the thing about I was like Facebook, you know, I spend. Well, we put out a podcast. I share it around. It's something like 20 independent supporting groups, and you know, you never see. Well, it's unusual to see a lot of immediate response, but on the other hand, I do see an immediate uptick in the number of people that YouTube tell us have been looking at that. So I do think, you know, people respond to it, but there's so much, and I mean, if it's something like an indie group that's got a lot of posts, like Independence Live, there's loads of posts by all sorts of people that who've got access to it. So you can put one thing on and it's dropped down out of sight, you know, within about half an hour, if that. So, I mean, I set them up so that they go in, you know, daily for a week if it's a new one.
So many different groups, and sometimes you're like, you're seeing the same thing. If you're members of different groups, then you're seeing the same thing, and it's almost like there's a disconnect. Yeah. We've all got the same aim, but there's a disconnect, and we really need to maybe be banging a few heads together to go, look, enough is enough. There's not that I want to skin cats. Clearly, you've just seen a wee one jump up on my lap. However, there's many ways to do things, and you may not agree 100% with what somebody's doing, but we're all working for the same cause, so we need to pull together. Part of what the opposition, the unionist side, is relying on, that there's going to be factions, and we'll just fight amongst ourselves rather than go, well, wait a minute, there's the common, and I don't like using the word enemy, but there's the common enemy. The union is the common enemy, not you know, people, but the union itself. That, you know, it's not working. It hasn't worked for a long time.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I've just noticed that Alan Petrie's put a comment in. Alan, it's a little bit too long for us to put it up on the screen, I think. But I mean, I think that's interesting what you're saying. You know, obviously some folk are skint. That's true. And maybe there's the other thing about a seeming lack of political will to move things forward. So I presume you mean by political parties at that point. But interesting what you say about needing to get back into communities to rebuild the movement. And yeah, maybe a march or two a year, but go into the communities to get hope back. And that's kind. I mean, RIC, the Radical Independence Convention, was it? Campaign. They were so good at that in 2014, you know, going into communities. And I suppose what Believe in Scotland is doing with its campaigning days in, you know, towns around the place. They've just had one in Hoyk, and they produce leaflets that are specific to the area. So for Hoyk, they had one that was all about the borders. I mean, I suppose that's a way of doing it. And maybe that's kind of a more effective way for where we are at the moment.
The flip side as well, though, is you're saying, like, yeah, there's too many marches and maybe there should just be one or two, but that would then probably mean that the one or two would be Glasgow and Edinburgh. And Scotland is so much more than Glasgow and Edinburgh. So the beginning of September, I was up in Skye for my holidays. Now, you do get, and previously you would get people from Skye coming down to the marches in Glasgow and Edinburgh, but it's a heck of a long trek for them, and they need to know that they're part of it as well, which is one of the reasons I really like the Elgin March. And the people who were up in Elgin, like Yes Murray, were saying, it's great, finally we feel we're getting a bit of support. So maybe it's almost like that. We need small localized things that, you know, people are aware of what are the issues in that area. And again, I can always bring everything around to independence and how independence, it's not going to be a sort of flick the switch and everything will be okay, but it's the key. The key is turned in the door, and it gives us that chance then to start rectifying what is wrong and being in control of everything that happens in our country.
Yeah.
I mean, there's new things that's happening as well, though, isn't it? Because to say marches and rallies, I tend to agree, Alan. I think a couple with really clear outcomes as well. What exactly is it we're rallying for? What is the message we're trying to rally behind? And I think that's a bit difficult in the current kind of limbo that we're in. And that's what really was the difference with the big ones. That was when we were pushing our government to demand another referendum. So it was that kind of, you know, we were focused behind something. But when you think about the number of conferences we've been to recently, there's groups looking at specific areas, moving it from should we be independent, moving it into, well, how are we going to do this bit when we are independent, which I think is much more, you know, it's quite a positive, quite a practical thing. But then if you look at the number of films that have been on the go, there's one that Lynne, you've just been in with the Stones. There's another one coming. There's a Scotland channel. It's just, I think there's perhaps different things happening. Perhaps, and Believe in Scotland are about to launch a whole series of what they're calling cultural events, you know, building the Scottish culture and poets and creatives and that kind of thing, which is opening up a completely new discussion. But can we just maybe ask Lynne about the experience of being filmed? What was did you enjoy your moment in the sun there? I've got a little clip which I'll do in a wee minute. It shows perhaps less glamorous than it sounds.
It was fine. Charlie's dead easy to get on with, and you know, so no issues with that. I did find it a bit strange at first that he was saying, "Can I come and film you loading up your van from your garage?" But he was telling the story and showing, like, well, this is how it happens. You know, it's got to all be kept somewhere, and it just, I suppose, it shows you what people are doing. We're all doing little or big different things, but taking responsibility for that. So he came to the house, filmed us loading up the van, had a wee chat with me, and then that was I think the Thursday, and he then filmed us up in Elgin at the march, where we would set it up and looking, you know, filming people coming up and looking at the stones and slates and seeing that. So it was nice to get a wee bit sort of recognition for what the Stones group does.
Should we do a little plug for the film? It's called Still Yes. And I think the YouTube channel is called Fresh Television. But we also interviewed Charlie Stewart, who's the filmmaker. So if you want to see the conversation with us talking about the film and, you know, what he did, you'll get that on our YouTube channel, and you'll get the podcast version on our website. You'll also get the link to it. The film is also in the notes to this podcast, so well worth looking at. But I'm just going to show you, this is, you know, the film has got a really nice close-up of Lynne explaining all this, and, you know, this lovely shot. But this is what it actually looked like to film.
Cross over, so you have the Yes Bikers coming along, but some of the Yes Bikers also paid Stones, and you'll have a sort of Alba Pipe Band, and some of the Pipers also paid Stones as well. So we all we interlink.
So that's Lynn's garage. Lynn being filmed in it. But we were so impressed with the gear that Charlie had on his shoulder, because I mean, Marlene and I wander around. She's got a GoPro and I've got just a camera, a phone, and sort of the odd little mic. We've got very, 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 very little compared to what a professional uses.
Compared to that.
Yeah.
And I saw that clip from Fiona, and then I saw you in the actual film. I think, oh, it just looks, you know, how he's framed you. It just looks so different, really, from actually how it looked from 90 degrees on.
Fiona's point of view.
Yeah, exactly. A point of view.
Is that not an important, you know, it depends on how you look at something as to how you perceive it. So the same could be applied to a whole lot of issues.
Oh, you know? Nice one.
Yeah, no, totally. How it impacts on how something impacts on one person doesn't impact on another person the same. So they're different, you know, feelings about it.
Yeah,
and you know, that's a really good link into our next section, isn't it? How groups are perceived. So if we start, Keir Starmer, or Free Gear Keir as he's now known.
Okay.
Yeah. So
moved on from Kid Starver.
Well, if we're gonna move, we probably do need to move on. I was going to say something else, but never mind. I'll
go on if you want to say something.
No. It's better to move. It's definitely better to move on. We need to, because we've got a lot of stuff, folks, and we've already said at the beginning of this we're probably not going to get through it. So I'll just shut up.
We can come back to you at the end.
I mean, the thing about it, before we move on to Starmer, though, because reporting Scotland. Not a fan of Reporting Scotland, never watch it, but it gets recorded in our house. And my husband said, oh, they did a lot about the 10th anniversary of the referendum. So I forced myself to watch it. And I mean, actually, I must say it's quite good. And they've got a bit from outside Holyrood, you can see the Yes Stones exhibition in it. It's kind of there. So fair dues to them. They did it. But the thing that caught my attention was actually Ruth Davidson. I mean, they had Alex Salmond, Swinney, Nicola Sturgeon, a load of other people recorded. And I'll just play it. If I can find it here. I'm just going to put this up. See what you think.
People there that were, you know, there were soft notes. They could have been converted, and I think that the thing that really sticks out for me in the last 10 years was, I think she had a moment where, you know, this could really have gone very differently, and that was in the immediate aftermath of the Brexit referendum, which Scotland hadn't voted for. And I remember her coming out on the morning after the Brexit vote, and actually they hadn't even stopped counting votes in some places, they were still going, saying, you know, this is a material change in circumstances, Scotland now must have another independent referendum. And it allowed people like me, who were staunch Remainers, to say, look, don't say that my Remain vote was a vote for independence, because it wasn't, you know. And I think that if she played a slightly longer game, and if she'd said, Brexit is so big and it's such a big challenge that I'm going to put party politics to one side for a moment, I'm going to try and work with the UK government, we need to salvage what we can from this, and then maybe 6 months down the line said, you know what, I can't work with these people, Scotland has another opportunity, it has a different choice, I think things could have been materially different. I think it would have been incredibly hard for people like me to kind of hold the line on that. And I think that she probably did have an opportunity. And her appetite to go so fast and so hard and so early took that opportunity away from her.
You might have accepted another independence referendum in those circumstances if she'd managed to.
I think I would have argued against it. I'm not sure whether I would have been able to take enough of the country with me for that. I mean, I think she would have had an awful lot of people that would have gone with her who, frankly, were turned off by the idea that she wanted to use Brexit to immediately jump to this other thing rather than let anything settle or to try and work or, you know, or try and show a level of statesmanship beyond her own partisan interest and the interest that is her guiding light in politics.
So, you know, it's at the end. Ruth Davidson, she just can't help herself. She has another wee dig at Nicola. But, you know, I just thought, that's a really interesting way to look at it. And she was quite frank there, saying, I think if that had happened, if there'd been, she'd done that, folk like her would have found it difficult to, I think she said, hold the line or persuade the country.
Yeah.
So I it's just like it caught my attention because I don't normally agree with anything that Ruth Davidson says, but there you go, I did. And you kind of think it's 10 years. Why on earth haven't we? Okay, we're not independent, clearly. It's a little bit, I think it's simplistic to say, well, that's all down to the SNP have lost interest, so let's not go down there. But nevertheless, 10 years, Brexit happened. Maybe if Nicola Sturgeon had done it differently, that could have shifted the polls a bit. And then for goodness sake, Boris Johnson as the Prime Minister, and a very hard Brexit as well. You kind of think, why on earth are we still just hovering slightly below, 50%? Often a couple of percent, more than the no's, but nothing like what we need actually to convince, to show that we've got a settled will in favour of independence.
Yeah, because that's what we're being told. We've still got a media that doesn't reflect the population of the people.
So are you saying the polls aren't? But we've got polling.
No, yeah. Well, and polls that are not published. Did Michael Gove?
But the ones that are published are not showing any much of. I mean, it's gone up from 45 to about 48, 49, 50 sometimes more than that.
Yeah.
I think the problem is we didn't. Whatever, it's talking about what could have happened back in 2016. We're in 2024. That's our current problem.
Well, yes, I know we're in 2024, but do we want to get to 2034? I'm not even going to say how old I'll be then. I'm even still alive. Do we want to get to, 2030? Or 2034 and still be having this conversation? That's I'm not suggesting there's easy answers to it. I'm just maybe thinking that sort of suggestion from Ruth Davidson might have things that can be taken forward by the situation that we are in. And I mean, I don't know about yourself, Lynn, but Fiona and I have loads of conversations about how we want the Scottish government to just get the bit between their teeth and do one thing or two things over the next couple of years before the next Hollywood election to kind of, make an impact, the kind of thing that will get people behind them,
Tangible things that you can see actually making a difference. But, from being on the Believe in Scotland stakeholders meeting earlier, one of the comments was devolution is a trap. Because they devolve powers to you, but they don't devolve the fiscal means to deliver what you want. So if you think about, and the BBC were running the headline saying, UK government, the pensioners' winter fuel allowance, but it's devolved. So in Scotland, it's the SNP that have taken away the winter fuel allowance and saying technically that's true, but that's because they cut our budget. They gave us the power to deal with it and then cut our budget.
Let's just looking at the time here. That's us halfway through the hour. We're still only on the first topic. So
let's get on to
let's
move on. Yeah. I said, Lynn, I said to Fiona in the week, I said, now look, both of us, we need to keep an eye on the time and move things along. So we just have to move things along. So she's just done it. She's just actually done it, right?
She didn't like it.
So the Labour Party and Mr., as he's being now known, Free Gear Keir Starmer.
It's not easy, a bit of a tongue twister.
And I see Wolfhead's just put in the comments, Starmer's only just getting started. They'll be screaming for independence before much longer. Well, that is certainly how it's starting to look, isn't it? I mean, what a dreadful, dreadful week they've had. They're only, 8-9 weeks in. They've got the first conference with a Labour Parliament for, was it 15 years or maybe even longer? and it all starts falling apart around him because all we're talking about is the winter fuel payment, his wife's £79,000 wardrobe. I don't think I've spent £79,000 in total on clothes in my entire life. You know,
No, I
it's
don't
an
think I
astonishing
don't think I
amount.
have either. Well, you know those in the election, Mr. Starmer had his list of six steps that he was going to take. Immediately he got into power, there'd be 6 steps. So there was a list, and then we looked at it and thought, well, that wouldn't work in Scotland because, so then there was also a Welsh list, which was slightly different from the UK list, but that was really the English list. And then there was a Scottish list of 6 steps, which was different again. So now he's got another set of 6 steps. I'm just going to show them to you. Okay, you ready for this? My first steps. 1, get Lord Ali to buy me some suits. 2, call half the electorate racist. 3, get Lord Ali to buy the missus some new frocks. 4, get even more suits from Lord Ali. 5, move into Lord Ali's flat and pretend it's my own. And 6, imprison anyone who calls me out. I thought I'll add that off Facebook somewhere. But the man has gone. I mean, it's actually, you know, what I'm doing now, it says next slide, and this is a slide. Oh well, that's the one about that's the one about Anna Sarwar. So this was a tweet that Greg Moody put up. So Anna Sarwar at the party conference goes, Scotland could extend winter fuel allowance. Scotland could extend winter fuel allowance.
Scottish Labour argues.
But
Scottish
Greg's,
Labour argues. Thank you. I can't actually see that on my.
Right,
I'm looking.
Well, Greg's point is, it says, so is he really saying vote Scottish Labour to counter the effects of UK Labour? And when you think about it, that's exactly what he's trying to say.
Exactly. So that's the bit
Crazy.
that we're up to. And then, I mean, I'm just putting this up for a laugh, but apparently Anna Sarwar was quite a good DJ. So for those of you, if you're later on watching this or just listening, this is a photo that was taken at Labour Party conference shindig, probably on the last evening. So Emily Thornby's there. I think she's playing air guitar, and Anna Sarwar had been. He's dancing, but he had been doing the DJing. Apparently, he's quite good at it actually. So be fair to the guy.
Got to
But
be good at
anyway,
something.
this slide, this of so I just, you know me, I kind of like graphs and things. So basically, the top line, the bluish one, it's people who approve of Starmer. He was up at 70% approval. Disapprove was about 30%, and then we get the election. He becomes a PM, and suddenly his approval slumps to 35%, and there's now 60% of people now who disapprove him. So there was a freebie story, there was that speech that he gave in the Number 10 Garden, and then of course end of July Rachel Reeves announces the changes to winter fuel payment. So it's not the first 3 months that he would have wanted.
It isn't.
And
but interestingly, I had a conversation in one of my jobs that I do. I was in, and I was talking about, it was on the radio, and I said, yeah, it's utterly ridiculous that somebody who's worth so much and earns so much is taking freebies for clothes. And the comment I got from the colleague was, well, we don't want we want our elected politicians to look respectable. I said, yeah, of course we do. But they actually have a clothing allowance. They could buy it from that. Or
and a generous
buy
salary.
out the wages like everybody else does. Unlike, you know, when I was a police officer, we were provided with our uniform because we had to wear a specific, you know, set of clothes. But I'm like, everybody else, if they don't get provided with a uniform, they have to buy their clothes. And they're not earning anything like that. And anyone taking anything that's not, you know, like a freebie like that, it's almost tantamount to a bribe, isn't it? Or will you owe me something for that, you know?
Yeah, well, indeed. And I mean, I tune into the newscast podcast that's on with, usually has Laura Kunsberg and Adam Fraser on it, and various other people. And Laura Kunsberg was saying on one of the episodes that she's had what she called was old Labour, senior Labour, people senior in the Labour Party, no longer in government, but they have been in the government in the past. So that would be Blair and Brown kind of time. And they've been saying to her, they have serious doubts about whether this bunch, meaning the current government ministers, are up to it. And you think, well, yeah, it just seems to be, there's the Rachel Reeves whole thing about, the winter fuel payment and doing that without any kind of analysis of it to guide her. But also, I watched Beth Rigby. She's an interviewer, a really good interviewer for Sky, and she was talking to Starmer, and she was just being really straight with him, and she was just saying, "Look, do you understand why people are so upset and annoyed about the free things that you've taken?" And he just kept saying, "But it wasn't against the rules."
Yeah.
And you think, oh, yeah, but what people are so annoyed and upset about is the fact that there are rules that let people in government and in politics generally that can do it. I mean, he just did not be able to see that. And she eventually said to him, "You just seem to be blind to how that lands on ordinary people," and that just seems to be the case, doesn't it?
That Rosie Duffield, the first Labour Party MP, has resigned within the last couple of days, and she was absolutely scathing about it. She said it's just greed, it's just nepotism, it's just, scandalous, really. And I'm really disappointed that none of the 37 Scottish Labour MPs have followed suit, because, we're still waiting for them to do anything that they said they would do in their manifestos when they were going to stand up for Scotland. Well, not yet, you haven't, and certainly not Scottish pensioners, you haven't.
But it's definitely shooting themselves in the foot, though, isn't it? Because, as you say, people are you've got morals and ethics, and whether or not it's against the rules, people can still look at it and go, yeah, well, it might be within the rules, but it's not right. It's not ethical. It's not moral. So you're getting however many 70-odd thousand pounds worth of clothes, yet you're quite happy for pensioners to freeze in the winter.
And they get a heating allowance, MPs, as well.
Yes.
So yes. Can I? Did you have more to do, Marlene, or can I go on to the Rachel Reeves ones?
No, I think go on to the Rachel Reeves thing, because I remember the Guardian had an article the other day that was saying, well, Rachel Reeves won't necessarily get the £1.3 billion that she thinks she'll get from winter fuel payments, because people will, start claiming. They've had all the starts of people are starting to claim pension credit. So I was sitting reading that, going, yeah, well, we told you that last week on our last month on our live stream. But yeah, get on to her again.
As you know, last month we were fascinated by Rachel because it was the first time we'd really seen her, and the eye-rolling performance. Well, she's living up to that. So I had a look this month, and the first clip kind of follows on from that pensioners thing, and this is a Tory MP begging her to realise that you can't, the pensioners are not the group to take everything from to balance the books. And Rachel manages to turn that round into a poor me, boo-hoo, pensioners have never had it so good, but I'm having to make tough decisions. So see what you think of her performance here.
Are not those of these pensioners who are earning less than minimum wage and are about to lose this vital support.
I understand the concerns that the Honourable Lady sets out. The state pension is worth £900 more than it was a year ago, and energy bills are lower this winter than they were last winter. As the Honourable Lady points out, we inherited a £22 billion black hole from the previous government, who had made unfunded spending commitments with no idea of how to pay for them. When I became Chancellor, I undertook an immediate audit of the spending situation to understand the scale of that challenge, and I made difficult decisions, some very difficult decisions, to put the public finances on a sustainable footing. They were tough decisions, but they were the right decisions in the circumstances that we face.
Poor Rachel having to make all those tough decisions.
I made tough decisions, and they were inevitable decisions.
And I had to do it. Those pensioners, they've got more money and lower bills. I don't know what they're moaning about.
It's the fact that she said we inherited a 22 billion black hole and we had no idea how to pay for it. Well, I'm sorry. You're the government. You create the currency. There is no black hole. Governments run deficit. It's not a household budget. They are choosing to do this, and they've targeted the wrong people to do it, because not only are the pensioners suffering, their families see that, younger people see that, and again, it's back to, most people are decent people. They just want to be able to get on with, have a reasonable life, heat their houses, feed their kids, clothe their kids. Nobody's, we're not all looking to be multimillionaires with super yachts and 14 houses in various countries around the globe. We just want to be able to get on with our lives, You
better make sure that Rachel Reeves doesn't hear you saying that, because you'll be getting the death stare like this poor guy got.
I'll be getting the eye roll.
She has made the political decision to scrap the commitment to at least 2.5% of GDP on defence spending, undermining our support for Ukraine, and instead prioritised giving her union paymasters inflation-busting pay rises that have only led to more unions calling for more strikes and more pay.
Let me respond directly on the issue of Ukraine. I had the pleasure to meet Minister Marchenko from Ukraine in my first couple of weeks in this job, and made the commitment to him to go ahead with the extraordinary revenue acceleration programme.
Didn't blink once. Complete
Yes.
Is she real?
You had said how robotic she was, but that clip really
you can almost see bits short-circuiting as she's talking. And then just to put the tin lid on her week, of course, this was a dreadful scene from the Labour Party conference where she was speaking. Her response is very bizarre as well when you hear that, but you may all have seen this, but we'll play it anyway.
Trust is hard-earned, but it's easily squandered. Just ask the Conservatives. They paid the price for their incompetence, their dishonesty, and their rule-breaking.
Extraordinary. I mean, horrible scenes to watch. But do you hear that thing she said at the end? This is a change Labour Party. Yeah. We're not a party of protest. Yeah. So she's saying that if you vote Labour, you turn a blind eye to anything that's going wrong anywhere. Yeah. It's an extraordinary thing. But just, terrible, terrible optics for them. But that poor young guy making a very reasonable point being manhandled.
I know. I mean, I just thought he was so brave doing that. Actually, it's really great to. It's really kind of great to see it. I'm just picking up that there's a couple of comments. So Wolf Pet put this one up about. This is going back to when we were talking about. It's to do with the rules shouldn't allow that kind of thing. It's not about being out with the rules. As she says, like wife and child beating was not out with the rules at one time. And then another comment we've had. So again, it's about the state pension. So we've got a clip that we're going to show for that, and I think next, it is, isn't it, Fiona? But it's true. It's true, Wolfpet. The figures that get quoted by the Tories have done it, and Labour are now doing the same thing. I mean, they're always given as all pensioners get the full amount of the state pension, whereas I did notice that at one point when she was talking, she did keep saying the new state pension. The thing is, though, that most people don't realise that most pensioners don't get the new state pension, and they're on it's about 50 quid a week less, actually. And I I just thought for ages, how on earth can we get that message over a bit more clearly? But yeah, most don't get that. So
So
if we got the
we've got Sharon
we've got the old. This is gladden everyone's hearts. This is this is a proper Labour Party spokesperson.
And it was the light at the end of the tunnel, really, for the conference, because this is the Labour Party actually, or the delegates actually voted to reverse the winter fuel payment cut. Whether that happens, who knows? But at least a few people still think it's wrong. And this is Sharon Graham of Unite.
Sharon Graham, Unite. The nation wants food, work and homes. It wants a high and rising standard of living. Security for all against a rainy day. Friends, that's a quote from the 1945 Labour Manifesto, written in the shadow of death, destruction and debt caused by years of war. It was a manifesto of hope, written at a time when our debt to GDP was 270%, nearly 3 times higher than it is now. No mention of cuts, no mention of austerity, and certainly no mention of making everyday people pay. Labour knew then that to make Britain more equal, they had to act and think differently. They knew to make it count and to make a real difference, Labour could not simply be better managers, they had to make lasting change. They promised jobs, they promised homes, and they built a national health service on the back of crisis. There wasn't a story of tightening belts or making some of the poorest in our society pay. Friends, people simply do not understand. I do not understand how our new Labour government can cut the winter fuel allowance for pensioners and leave the super rich untouched. This is not what people voted for.
And she's absolutely right. That's not what people voted for.
She's absolutely right. Actually, I thought that was a breath of fresh air, really. And you know, I mean, everything she said. I mean, she put it so. It was so well done, wasn't it? You quote the 1945 manifesto. But that debate should have happened on the Monday of the conference, quite near the beginning. So first, so before Rachel Reeves' speech and before Keir Starmer's speech, and they pushed it back till after that, and then I think they pushed it back again. So that was on the last day, by which time a lot of the actual politicians, maybe not the Labour Party constituency people that were there, but the politicians had gone. So she was speaking like that, but she was kind of speaking to a bit of a, you know, an empty room, and that in itself just tells you even, you know, something again about the way that Starmer's managing this new Labour Party, the one that's not a protest movement. And little, I mean, please, people don't think I actually read the Telegraph, but I do read the Mac cartoons in the Telegraph, and he had one about that. And so it's for those of you who maybe can't or listening on audio. So they're at the Labour Party conference. There's an elderly man and woman. They're just leaving, and the lady is saying to her husband, "Well, I'll tell you, booing the winter fuel vote delay warmed me up. I must remember that when we can't heat the house." So you know, when you get cartoons like that happening, that's damaging. I mean, maybe not many Labour supporters actually read the Telegraph, but then I don't. I pick them up elsewhere. That one was all over social media actually. So it's not been a good 3 months.
These are the wee things, though, that little cartoons like that can really kind of cut through when you haven't got the time to read long articles, go into the minutiae of it. When somebody has got the ability to capture that, a drawing and a sentence, and it crystallizes it all. I mean, I saw a little image today, and it's Angela Rayner sort of hunkering down, talking to an old man in an old folks' home. But the bubble sort of above her is saying, so once you've died because you can't afford to heat your home, we're then going to tax the money you thought you were planning to leave to your family. You know, and it's like they keep taking, and they keep taking.
Exactly. So now it's my turn to look at the clock and go, but maybe moving on.
I think we were going to do a little clip about GB Energy, but I think we'll leave that one because we've sort of covered. Let's move to Holyrood, because we've got a new Scottish Conservative leader. Can anybody name that man?
Murdo? Was it Murdo?
Sadly for sheer comic value, no, it wasn't.
What? Murdo's lost another election. Oh,
yeah,
dear.
that's 28 now, I think. So it's Russell Finlay, of course. Now, I don't know about you, but there's three guys in Scottish Labour I find very difficult to tell apart. Russell Finlay and I can't remember his name. Doug Lumsden, is it? Derek Lumsden, somebody Lumsden. Two angry middle-aged men, and then Dougie Ross, another angry heading for middle-aged man. So
just to say, they're in the Conservative Party. You said Labour.
Did I? Oh, right, the Tory Party. Yeah. Well, who can tell the difference these days? Yeah. But what was quite interesting, though, we're talking there about the Labour Party conference coming to overturn the winter fuel payment. The Scottish government have just lost 2 votes, which, is probably somebody giving them a bit of a kicking, I think. And it was the Tories had put up 2 motions, one about we want you to reverse the cut to returning peak time fares, which Fiona Hislop then argued against but was outvoted, and the other one was about the means testing school meal payments for P6 and 7, which Jenny Gilruth put a motion against and was outvoted. Now, these are probably not binding votes, given that they're just Tory party proposals. But they've got a budget coming up, and this is, they can't rely on having a majority anymore. And Willie Rennie was very quick to point that out, and I think that's it's worth just hearing what he said. Hi, Hashbury. I'm just see Hashbury's just joined us. Better late than never, Hashbury. Only joking. You're welcome anytime.
Point of order, Willie Rennie.
I think it would be wrong to let this moment pass. This is a significant moment that the government has lost 2 votes on manifesto promises, and therefore, have you had any indication from the government that they are planning to make a statement before the end of the week?
Mr. Rennie, I am in no doubt whatsoever that you know that is not a point of order. That concludes decision time.
Now, whilst it's great to see him getting smacked, he did make a good point. And Marlene, you were spotted something about, what happens if the budget doesn't get agreed?
I did a little bit of. I spotted an article about what happens if that carries on, but I did a little bit of looking to. So first of all, those 2 votes that they lost, they're not binding. They're not. I mean, those things are going to happen, and they're not a binding vote. But as he says, actually, it is fair enough. They are quite symbolic, and I couldn't find out so much about the one about the bringing back the peak fares and when they took them off. But I did go quite far back to when they brought in when the ScotGov brought in the free school meals. Now that goes a long way back. So you can go onto the Parliament website and find out who voted for what. So who voted against bringing in free school meals? The Tories. But also Labour Party. Now, to be fair, there was quite a lot that was being brought in. So, it wasn't just a quite straight yes and no kind of thing. But nevertheless, Joanne Lamont, I think, she was the Labour leader at the time. So the Labour Party voted against Scott bringing that in, and the Tories voted against it. It went through because there was a majority at that point. There were other people who voted for it, and then they come in and they sort of put this up and say, oh, you're having to cut back on free school meals. You shouldn't be doing that. And I just think, God, the hypocrisy in that is what always just gets me more than anything else. So I just want to make that public.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was if they've lost 2 votes, and there was the article I was reading was saying, well, what if that is the Scottish government's budget, because that's coming up? If they lose if they can't get a budget passed, does that mean, well, what will happen then? I mean, they can't govern, they can't get it through. I mean, it's happened. I mean, it's not unusual that a budget doesn't go through on the first pass, and then they all go away and have a wee talk to each other, and they come back and they make some changes. So it's not necessarily unusual for it not to go through immediately, but it could be that they don't get it through at all. And then there was sort of, surmise about, well, some people saying, well, in that case, the SNP should just say, okay, you don't want us to do this. We're taking a back step. You get it done. If you've got a majority in this parliament, you say what, you get it done. And then the next step on was that actually they call a quick Holyrood election, a snap Holyrood election. And I immediately thought, oh God, you don't want to do that though, because I mean, at this particular moment, it could then be that you end up with a majority of unionists in Holyrood. And I was thinking, well, that's that for another 5 years, but apparently it doesn't work like that. If it would, the normal 2026 election would still happen as long as the snap one happened more than 6 months before that. So that you could have a snap one, see what happens, and then still have one in 2026. I mean, I don't think any of that's going to happen. I think it'll someone or other will back off. But it does, Willie Rennie, he was making a good point there, even though he was being a bit sneaky as to how he got it on the record.
But also the amount they have in there to spend their budget on it, that's not going to change. So it wouldn't matter who was in charge. There's not going to suddenly be any more money. They would have to manage that same amount of money. So and again, that's why we're back to the devolution is a trap, because this is all you're getting. So like it or lump it. And then you had just one wee clip I had seen was Martin Geisler interviewing Ian Murray and saying, well, you've been given this 150 million through the kind of like, Scottish office or whatever. Was he the Secretary of State for Scotland? Is that his title?
Viceroy General, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And he said, oh no, I haven't. He said that's a figure that's been made up by some newspaper and they've just run with it. But what I was watching they were also showing all the repostings that Ian Murray had done. Ian Murray reposted this. So he's there plain-faced lying, saying, no, I've not got that. That's been made up. He's been sharing it.
Yeah,
so
and he had to retract that later on, what he said to Martin Geisler, because he had to take it back later on.
But how many people see the retraction? It's a bit like they print a big lie and people get annoyed about it, complain about it, and retract it, and it's on page 24 and a little column at the bottom down here. It's back to the they keep telling the lie, they just double down on it.
But we've got about a minute to go before we've got to the hour. So let's just finish on a high note because we have got a bit of an exclusive for people who've managed to hang on to the end for the whole hour. We reward you sticking with us. And that is Marlene and I were at the launch of a new campaign, which is quite an interesting cross society group of people who are campaigning to make is that noise? Is that so that you make Scottish democracy local? And Leslie Riddick, who's always very, very good in these kind of things, explained really well the difference between Scottish democracy and a normal democracy. So we'll just play this. And this is an exclusive because it hasn't been shared yet. It's going to go out in the next couple of weeks. We'll have in fact, next week, I think, it's our video premiere. But here's a little snippet just to whet your appetite.
For example, has a system whereby only higher rate taxpayers pay any tax to central government in Sweden at all. Most of you in the room who are average taxpayers would pay your entire income tax to your local council. And then blow me, when they have council elections, they have a 92% turnout. Why do you think that would be? Because they've got your money. And to come back to the question about creating interest, it's astonishing what interest you can create when there's power in the room. Okay.
So, the audio was a bit echoey there, but as we heard at the beginning, she said if you were in Sweden, it's only higher rate taxpayers who'll be paying any money to central government. Everybody else pays everything to their local government because that's who provides your services. And that gives you a 92% turnout because they've got your money. So you're really, really invested in the decisions they make and who you elect. And I think the other figure she said, our average council size is something like 176,000 people in each of our council areas. Right the way across every other country in Europe, the average is 10,000 people. So that shows the difference, 176,000 versus 10,000. That's what local is. So this campaign, there's a declaration that you can sign online, and the link will be in our in the notes of our podcast, but it is actually buildlocal.scot is the website if you want to go and have a look at that. So there you go. There's something we can get behind, make a bit of a change. So that's us. We're at the hour. I think that's probably been a good roundup of most of the stuff we wanted to cover. A couple of little bits we couldn't squeeze in. So as ever, thanks to everybody in the comments for joining in, and hope you found this interesting. There'll be an audio version of this. Will go out as Friday's podcast, and it'll be on our YouTube channel if anybody wants to share it or have another look. So that's it from us this month. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye. Speak soon.